Okay, welcome back to Shifting Views with Willis. I'm Wayne Willis, as usual, joined by my partner in innovation, Rob Lewis. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Wayne.
Dragged you on again.
You have dragged me on again.
And you love it every time?
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. And our guest today, we're going interstellar. And I was trying to think before we sort of started recording how to introduce your company, Al, and we'll come to that. And I'm going to let you do it because it's going to be a lot easier. But essentially, you are the Chief Sustainability Officer of Pan Galatic, which is a Web3 agency that's exploring blockchain, space, and sustainability. That's my wrap up of it. You can clarify it.
I couldn't have done it better myself.
Yeah. So now we have to explain each of the elements of everything I've just said and what all of that means.
Okay.
Yeah. But before we get to that point, let's just take a step back. So I know you really from broadcasting, and in honesty, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome here because you. I don't want to use the word veteran, but like a long-time radio presenter, broadcaster, producer with the BBC, one of the founders or co-founders of BBC Introducing, which gives bands and artists across the UK a chance to get their music exposed through the BBC. But aside from your work in radio, you do so much around arts, photography, community, and feeding through all of that is this kind of a sustainability green thread, which kind of runs through pretty much everything you do. Like, you love sustainability. You're all about green.
Yeah. I live on this planet.
Yeah.
I'd like to look after it. and all the people I love are on this same planet as well. So yeah, all those eggs are in one basket. So I really need to look after it.
And you like to make the connection as well because you do so much in arts. I mean, with your photography stuff that you do, you run the Creative Cultural Company, which is endless amounts of arts initiatives, bringing people together, communities together, putting on showcases and events and all of this stuff. Do you see there's a tight link between the arts world, the music world, and your passion for sustainability? Do you see those linking together?
Yeah, I mean, it's full of creative people and people with amazing ideas. And we need those ideas and we need that innovation to be able to tackle the challenges that the world is facing, because we're all facing it together. And so those creative minds, those innovators are important, but also the poets and the people who express things. You know, if you want to get a message across to people and help people understand why they might want to open their mind to a particular thing, then a poet or a song or a piece of art is one of the many vehicles, but can be very effective.
It's incredibly powerful, isn't it? We've just done a music podcast, haven't we? And we spoke heavily in that around harnessing the power of music, the power of messaging from performers, and the way that it unites people on whatever the subject is. You know, in this case, we're talking about sustainability, but it could be uniting on any form of messaging. And it's just amazing how people can come together around an art. And if you can harness that power in some way, then you can really create powerful movements.
You can. And currently, one of the things that Creative and Cultural has is the CEC, which is the Climate Engagement Centre in Hull. And in that Climate Engagement Centre, we have the things you would expect. So makeup recycling, book swaps, seed swaps, lots of information about projects that people are doing, everyone who's turning their climate anxiety into action, you know, signposting people to their projects to give them more support. But the biggest thing that's taking up the majority of the space in the CEC is an art exhibition. And it's an exhibition called I Am Impact. And it's an artist's perspective on the 9 planetary boundaries and how people can look at their own engagement in that. And it's very powerful. And when people leave, that's the bit they're talking about.
Yeah. We've spoken about this quite a lot, haven't we, about how artists are probably the most creative people on the planet. Yet in the world of corporate innovation, where we do a lot of work, they don't go anywhere near that. It's too touchy-feely, it's just too tangential for them to think about. But like for me, like art's about connecting with someone emotionally, whether it's something you look at, something you listen to, something you read, and the best art connects with someone emotionally, just like the best products and innovation would need to connect with someone emotionally. So to me, there's a really rational connection there that is massively underutilised, I would say.
Absolutely. And as all of those corporate executives are driving home from work, they're probably listening to their favourite music and singing every word.
Yeah, exactly.
It's strange, isn't it? How the power. I always refer to music in particular. I always say it's a powerful drug. It's like a global drug that it infects everyone. You know, whatever the type of music it is that you listen to, where you come from. Yet it seems to be so underutilized or only used in like really obvious situations. We talked on the last podcast about how it's used, for example, in advertising. And they say, well, look, we need to have sound in this advert. We don't really know why we need to know sound, but we definitely know that it needs music, sort of thing. And I think if there was a deeper understanding of not just music, but all art, clearly the power that it has over the human and how it brings so many people of all different backgrounds and beliefs or whatever together in this unified feeling, then surely it's aching to be used for something wonderful that affects us all, which sustainability links nicely onto sustainability, surely.
Yeah, I would have thought so. It does link to sustainability very nicely. But one of the things with music and with art is that you can express things that words can't.
Yeah.
So our language is based on a series of tags or labels for things, so we could say bell, the word bell. It really doesn't sum up hearing one.
Yeah.
It depends on how you say it.
Yeah. It depends on the tone. Yes, there's a nuance to that.
There is. So we have labels for everything. But if you use a piece of art or a different form of expression, you can quite often resonate messages which just are lost in language. They're lost in translation.
Yeah. One thing I think is really interesting about art is we tend to think of art as slackers. You're in a rock band, you're a slacker. You're an artist, you hang around like throwing paint at a wall, you're a slacker. But my daughter's actually doing a degree in art, and you see the amount of work that goes into producing something. It's not, you don't just stand there and draw something or whatever. It takes an awful lot of thinking about, doesn't it? And I think it's, when she did A-level art, the lady at the school said, this isn't an easy subject. It actually requires a lot of effort. And then I watched her do it. It takes bloody ages to produce something quite cool and good.
Yeah.
So not slackers is what I'm trying to say.
No, and you have to be brave because you're exposing your inner thoughts, and other people are probably going to see it.
Yeah, because it's the most personal thing, isn't it? It again, we've spoken about before how it forms your identity, your values, maybe it's sort of the politics you're into, the people you hang around with, the way that you dress, the way you express yourself. All of these elements kind of inform how you develop as a human. And then when you go on to further points in life, in whatever it is that you're doing, in whatever world, you're probably taking that sort of baggage, if you like, with you. That's informing your direction in some way, because it's formed like your values on life, on experiences, on politics, whatever it might be.
Absolutely, and the values that a lot of artists hold are about sustainability. They are about looking after the planet. Their fears about biodiversity loss, their fears about flooding, their fears about losing their family or their peers to some kind of climate change disaster. It's people get anxiety about these things, and one way of dealing with anxiety is to express yourself.
Yeah.
And art can be a great outlet for
and
that.
Do you think that there's a particular link there? You're right. Many artists or musicians or creatives of any sort typically are more conscious about the environment, the planet, climate change. I would argue you would hear more from those, or maybe it's just because they're publicly more spoken and we hear it more from them. But do you think there's an emotional link there that comes from the creative that makes them more, if you like, sentimental or feel deeper about the environment that's around them?
That could be true, or it could just be that they've got the means to express themselves and they've found their outlet, and others haven't yet.
Yeah. Yeah,
I really like that film on Netflix, Don't Look Up, because that was basically a massive long parody of exactly how we're living, and it's just like laid out bare. This is the path we're obviously brought into space and sustainability for you, and the arts, so quite a good example.
Absolutely.
But what a great film!
Yeah,
it was excellent.
Yeah. Moving on to sustainability then, this forms a huge part of your life, and it's something you truly believe in. You're always pushing to try and drive a message or try and make a change, whether that's at a local level or regional level, national level, to try and change the way that we behave, the way we live, the way we access food, all the things that essentially form the natural world. When did that start becoming like a key feeling for you? Has it been, since childhood, or was there a switch point where you really started to become particularly conscious about what was happening with the environment?
It was about 12 years ago when I was director of a festival, and it was a festival that moved from being based at a leisure centre, in the grounds of a leisure centre. People camped in the fields, the playing fields, and then they used the leisure centre. And it moved to a space further out, which was basically all field-based. So we're putting up marquees and we're camping. So people were eating, sleeping, walking, doing everything else you might do, dancing, doing everything all in nature. And it kind of dawned on me that we needed to preserve that space and not leave a footprint. But I realised there was a lack of training, a lack of resources, a lack of literature on how to do that. I luckily got in touch with ASP, which is the Association of Sustainability Practitioners. They were very welcoming to me as an uneducated sustainability person. And they supported me in finding the information I needed, getting the training I needed, and then training green teams to be able to carry out what we wanted to become a sustainable festival, to eventually have the Arts Council paying other festival organisers to come to our festival to learn how to do that. And that all came just from reaching out and saying, I don't know how to do this, but I think it's the right thing to do. Can anybody help? I started learning from there, and that was, it's about 12, 13
So was
years
that
ago.
just a switch point? So you're running this festival, and then you essentially become aware that, look, we're essentially leaving a footprint here of everything that we're doing.
There was a lot of garbage
Yeah.
being created.
And was this just a trigger? Was just like a vision? Did it, like an overnight thing? Well, or is this over a period of time of a conscious kind of? You're seeing, because we see footage, don't we, of some of the big festivals that happen across the country, and you always see it on the news, the aftermath of tents left behind and garbage and stuff. I mean, you just see it everywhere, and you look at it and you think, my God, we're disgusting that way as humans. I just can't believe that we would. You just wouldn't do that in your own house or whatever. Why would you do that in this wonderful field? So maybe larger festivals are becoming more aware of this sustainability thing and trying to incorporate it as part of their action. But is that because it's become like a popular thing to do now, do you think? Or
for some, potentially. For some, also certainly because that is the demand of the people who are going. They want that.
So there's a people power
Yeah,
driving
absolutely. But also with festivals like the ones run by Melvin Benn, who's from Hull.
Yeah.
He runs Festival Republic's festivals.
Yeah.
He was a very early adopter, pioneer of doing things more sustainably. And I've been involved in festivals all my life because my family were an Irish music band and to festivals all the time. So I grew up in that world. When I started sort of running big stages, so obviously you said I was in the BBC over 20 years, and I hosted the stage at Leeds Fest like 17 times or something, 17 years after starting that. And you start to notice that it does have a big footprint. A lot of stuff is left behind. But also you're responsible for an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
So when I was director of the festival that I was running, I realised that what we actually had in that field, and I probably wouldn't have noticed if we hadn't transitioned from a different space, but what we had in that field was we had its own microcosm, because everything was happening within the space that popped up and then went again. So if we could get it right there, then maybe some of that is a learning opportunity, maybe it's a model that can be shared, and maybe it's something that could go home with people as well.
Yeah.
So it just started to become more important to me over the years. And then about 12 years ago, I just decided, right, I just need to, if I want to see change, I've just got to get stuck in. And ASP were really supportive. And as of earlier this year, last year, I became a director of ASP, responsible for innovation and technology. So very happy to do that after they helped me.
How do you feel about the state of the world now? Do you feel, from an environmental point of view, do you feel angry? Do you feel fear? Do you feel more positive that the changes are happening? What's your current state?
I'm a bit of a solar punk, really.
Right.
I'm optimistic, always.
Yeah.
I know that people who get their education from Terminator 2 are scared of technology. I'm not so. Maybe they should watch The Creator. It's a better film. Well, they're both good films. But I'm a bit more optimistic about how tech can help us, or how we can use those tools to make things better. But I'm also quite optimistic about the fact that the people who are involved in that world do have values, and they do want to see their children grow up in a world that is better. I see people taking responsibility. Between October and November last year, I ran 100 events. So it was Humber Eco Fest, supported by ASP. ASP ran the online version, and I and I did the physical version, ending in Humber Eco Conference. We had 100 events, and each one of those events was a separate project, and each project had been set up by an individual just turning their climate anxiety into action, just off their own back, and inviting other people in the community to do it with them. And what we were doing was trying to showcase that, highlight that, and add capacity to that, but just celebrate it. And just celebrating all of those projects, you can't come away from that without feeling optimistic that people are taking action and they will push the dial.
Yeah.
Now, it is massive. The challenges are massive. But that's why we need every human in every job, in every sector, to just do what they know is right for themselves.
Yeah.
But I have optimism because I am seeing that action happening in a way that can be celebrated. And I know that a lot of people get their news from the TV.
Yeah.
News is generally designed, and I know this having been a journalist for many years, is generally designed to let us know what we need to know about, to warn us about things, tell us when to duck and cover.
Yeah.
You know, there isn't a lot of time in the news for good news.
Yeah.
So I wanted to address that, which is why I started BBC Eco Time. I ran it for 18 months up until November, which is about celebrating all those stories.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many I found.
Yeah.
Across the 4 local authorities of the Humber, 500 projects, all set up by people who just wanted to make a change.
Yeah.
When you see that happening, it makes you really optimistic.
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. The media is obviously there to sensationalise to some extent and keep us on our toes, keep a sense of alert and all that kind of stuff, and without getting too much into media conversation. But that basically, so it's always going to look bad. It's always going to be terrible. And what you're saying, it's not that it's not bad. We do need to do something about sustainability, but actually there's real optimism around this because we're advancing so much in technology, and also because the human spirit, the belief in sustainability and being better and being green actually is there.
Yes.
They just need to be able to have the wherewithal to be able to do it within their own lives. In some cases, have access to the tools and things that will help them do that and the opportunities to do that. But fundamentally, at their core level, everybody wants to be better and live on a sustainable planet. It's, for the most part, that's probably a fair analysis.
Yeah, I'd say anybody who's got children or pets or loved ones or grandparents, they want them to be healthy and happy and safe.
Yeah.
And they know that climate change is not the answer to that. So addressing these issues is really important.
Yeah.
But also, even if they don't care about people, maybe they care about wildlife.
Yeah.
And they want that to be safe. So people, we're built to care.
Yeah.
That's how we became a species that lasted, because we care.
Yeah.
I do personally feel there's a little bit of treating technology as a backstop. We've made loads of reversals in this country in terms of policy with climate change, like new gas exploration in the North Sea, etc. But to me, that's done thinking that, fission will eventually save all power. And they're kind of waiting for that golden egg. I just can't see why they would make those decisions. It's obviously driven politically and by people, lobbies, and money fundamentally. It's obviously not the right thing to be doing. So I do worry a little bit that we just feel like we will invent something that's going to dig us out of this crappy hole. And I think that's a bit of a stupid thing to do. Because for me, it's about behaviour as well. So going back to the festival thing, you should be able to knock that on the head by stopping Lidl selling a £40 pop-up tent. So if I'm going down to Reading and I've got to lug a tent back with me and I've got to take it down, it's only 30 quid, we'll just leave it there. But that's driven by a business model, isn't it? And that's very easy to change that behaviour. So I think there's a lot of other people who are not behaving responsibly as well. I agree with you that we have got a future because we're a smart species and we'll definitely figure something out. But I do feel a little bit we're also kind of banking on that as well, and we're not prepared to change behaviour. Yeah. So to me, it's both things. You've got to change behaviour and adopt technology. But the good news is all that's about innovation, encouraging people to do the right thing, and figuring out how to incentivise that and give them the products and services to allow that to happen. And I've got 3 kids as well, and hopefully I'll have grandkids at one point. So, we've all got a lot vested in this planet, haven't we?
Absolutely. And there is a message in the general news media that there's a lot to be worried about, and people get the panic. But panic can also freeze people in their tracks. People can end up not able to act because they don't know what to do for the best, or it seems too overwhelming. And that's why we need the people who are just taking it upon themselves to grow vegetables in the grass verge in front of their house, or whatever it is they've decided to do. We need some focus on them. We need to celebrate them. We need to add capacity to what they're doing, join in with them now, and make that possible. But we also need to address some of the bigger issues, like the fact that this city that we're in now will at some point be underwater unless we do something about it. It may end up underwater no matter what we do about it. We're on a finite planet that, we're swallowed by the sun eventually. But, it's just about buying some time and enjoying that time and doing the best we can with it. So if we can slow that process down, which is one of the things Pan Galactic's working to do, if we can slow that process down, then that's got to be something to strive for.
Yeah, I was at something at the university a few weeks ago, and Andy Parkinson was presenting at it, and we were in the lecture theatre at Hull, and he said, this is actually below sea level. And I was thinking, surely not, it's like 20 miles from the coast, 5 miles from but then I looked online, we're like slightly under sea level, and that's a long way into Cottingham Road for people who know Hull. But yeah, it's fairly scary, isn't it? Yeah. That whole, the whole lagoon project, and that seems to have hit the buffers. I don't know what's going on with that, but some of these things you could do to address that are just not being funded, or they'll take ages to come to fruition, won't they?
Yeah, so that's why as Pan Galatic, we've approached the European Space Agency to back us in doing something about that, along with our partners, Optimal Cities and PAT Foundation, the Planetary Today Foundation and Green Task Force and others to project manage something we can do together, just to put 230,000 trees in the right places, really, to break up the ground that's there, to make it more absorbent, to absorb some of the water directly into the trees as well, but also deal with some of the other problems we've got, which will worsen with climate change, like air pollution. So by putting hedgerows along the routes that people are walking to school, perhaps, we can absorb maybe some of that air pollution, especially if we target the areas where there is pulmonary health problems reported, and all of this can be done through the project that we're project managing with Pan Galactic, but with our partners Optimal Cities and that.
So let's talk about Pan Galactic then. The bit that really is the headline bit for me, obviously, is when you say anything to do with space, that immediately sounds cool in my eyes, and to some people it might sound scary and obscene, depending, because they might immediately leap to, like Elon Musk sending rockets to Mars and things like, there's always an extreme when you talk about space, when you hear about it in the media. Yep. But clearly there's great opportunity. What is it that Pan Galactic are trying to achieve? What do you see this agency is set up to do, and why is space important?
Well, space, as you say, is a driver for technology. Anybody who's got a mobile phone is using space technology. Several of the components that are in every phone were actually designed for space. It's connected to a satellite, space. If they're travelling around by sat-nav, that's space. And then when they finally switch their phone off and go to sleep at night on their memory foam mattress, designed for space. Yeah, space is a driver for technology. But also, space has some unique qualities that don't exist on Earth. A different gravity, different thermodynamics, just some difference we can work with to develop something maybe in a new way or a unique way. So it's certainly something to be considered when people are thinking, is something possible? Well, maybe it isn't possible on Earth. Maybe it is possible in zero gravity in a different thermodynamic environment. So what we've done with Pan Galatic is we've put a great team together of different minds with different expertise from who've had success in different fields, and a second crew, which is our advisory crew, who are experts in everything really that we need to learn more about, who are kind of holding our hand through this. Including health in space with Professor Thais Russamano and planning for space missions and lunar colonies with Silvio Pervu, and these are great people. What we're trying to do is use space technology and the environment of space to actually create some benefit and do things differently. We're also tackling sustainability and blockchain. In David Attenborough's most recent book, he talked about the benefits of blockchain for recording things as a ledger that's immutable and trustless and transparent, a good way of getting something from one place to another.
Yeah.
With the way things are going with technology, there's trends in this. Governments in Europe and in the UK and other places are trying to make it so that every single bit of data which is shared, whether it's by text, by internet of any sort, email, whatever, has to be filtered for security before it gets to the receiver.
Right.
That's one kind of regulation that's being pushed for. I can understand that. It comes with problems. It comes with vulnerabilities, because the more filters you put in place, the more potential vulnerabilities you're creating as well. And people are hacking things. So, if you were to send a message to a loved one, you would want the message that you typed in to be the message that they got.
Yeah.
It won't necessarily be. Someone can intercept that and change it before it gets there, which is very upsetting if it's between you and a loved one.
Yeah.
It's also extremely dangerous if it's a vital piece of data from one government to another, perhaps.
Sure.
It's also really important when it comes to sustainability. How many fish were caught? How many trees were planted? How much forest was attacked? How big is the fire? These things need to be recorded in a way that's trustless. That's really important. But blockchain has issues. It's a new technology. And as a new technology, it's not addressed its sustainability issues.
Yeah.
It has, in its current forms, a footprint. There's proof of work and there's proof of stake. Ethereum has moved over to proof of stake. Ethereum, for anybody who doesn't know, is more on the kind of cryptocurrency side. Yeah. But it is a platform for building things on. That's all it really is. It's not a lot of people just see it as a form of money, but it's not. It's a platform to build on. You can build all kinds of things on Ethereum. Ethereum's moved over to proof of work, which is a lot more sustainable. Bitcoin is still on proof of work. Proof of work is more secure. It's a much more robust system, but it's got a much bigger footprint.
Right.
And that's because the computers need to be kept cool. So you need big fans to cool down these big banks of computers to make all of these calculations. You could run them all off renewable energy, but where those sites are, currently there isn't enough renewable energy being generated where they are to run them.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of work to do. But there's a lot of people who care within the blockchain sector as well, who want to make it right. And blockchain also, it kind of liberates things a bit because it's decentralized as well. It's disruptive, but it's also very secure and it's very liberating. So there's a lot to be said for it, but it has a footprint issue. So within Pan Galatic, we decided just on a research and development basis, we would look at that industry as well and the issues within that and see if there was a way of coming up with a sustainable way of running the same thing or a very similar thing to the current blockchain system.
Right.
And that's what we've been working on. Now, it just so happens that space technology and the space environment does have some very useful answers to that problem. We've done a lot of research and development down that line. We've managed to get great support from UK Space Agency. We spent last year on the Explore programme with UK Space Agency. We're now on the LEO programme for the next 6 months with them. And they're giving us support, helping us develop what we're doing. And we now have our proof of concept, which we will be launching in the next couple of months. And we've managed to design a unique way of doing blockchain without the footprint issues. I can't say a lot more about it right now before we launch it, but it does use space technology to be able to do that. So that's one of the things that we're doing. That is our main thing. But also, the way things are going with technology and computers, quantum computing is making it so what was secure won't be for long. Blockchain is super secure. Elliptical curve encryption is super secure, but not for long. So we are also working on making a blockchain which is post-quantum secure. And that's using lattice and other methods. End game would be to have a blockchain that was sustainable, that was post-quantum secure, that was for the space sector, to give back to that, but also using space technology to make it more sustainable for Earth as well, where we can create a platform where we can liberate the space market for people who are developers who want to create something useful, like an app, who want to create something useful that will have the benefit of being able to be used within the space sector, which is a very fast-growing sector, and to utilise that technology as well to be able to be used on Earth as well. It also opens up opportunities for us to take the sustainability side even further. We're working with our team of advisors. One of those is Sylvia, who's an incredibly clever guy, and his project Optimal Cities. And we're partnering with the Plant a Tree Today Foundation locally, who we currently have a permaculture garden with and have had for a while now. Yeah. And so our permaculture garden is on Pat Foundation's land. They have thousands and thousands of trees, native trees that they're growing with their project, which is partnered with the Green Task Force, retraining veteran Marines to be forest rangers. They can then plant those trees and maintain those trees. With the satellite technology, we can say where to put the right tree in the right place to have the maximum effect, to mitigate flooding, to reduce the air pollution, and to have the biggest positive effect on the local community.
Right.
So we're focusing that on the Humber region. So that's using Earth observation technology and AI to help that team target exactly the problem we've got in the fastest time possible and put hopefully 230,000 trees this year into the right places. So it's multifaceted, and don't get me started on Pangalatic Academy. That's another pet project.
Is that already being used to some extent? Like, so just going back to planting trees, putting them in the right area, making sure the resources that are useful because they're put in the right area. But is, in terms of technology and establishing where that is that already part of something that exists and you're building on that? Or is this something that's completely new? Currently, do we just kind of throw trees up anywhere where, or is there like a science to it in the sense of we need to have so many thousand trees at this point because this is the benefit that it'll create for this area, an ecological benefit?
Yes, there is a science to it. But whether it's completely new, no, nothing is. It's all atoms. No,
but I mean, in terms of the methodology for doing it is what
it's
I mean.
a realigning of existing parts with new ideas to do things differently.
Yeah.
A sustainable way of doing things is to reuse what's already there.
Yeah.
Rather than create lots of new stuff and send things into space. No, we are focusing on using what's already there in a different way. And it's all about partnerships, and it's all about getting the right people together to do things differently. Pat Foundation are already growing the trees. They're already doing amazing work. Green Task Force are already doing incredible work of planting a lot of trees and maintaining them as well, which is just as important as putting them in the ground, because a lot of them will die otherwise. Optimal Cities have the ability to use all of the data sets of people's health information. So, for example, we can look, using Optimal Cities, we can look at Hull, for example, and say these are the areas where people are suffering from problems to do with potentially air pollution. So people with pulmonary problems, asthma. These are where the schools are. This is where people have to go from that community to where they need to go to school or go to work. There's a major road. That might be where some of that pollution's coming from. Can we put a hedge in there? Pulling all these data sets together, we can say, yes, right there is the best place to make the most effective change. And Pat Foundation can then say, right, okay, so we can use less resources, work faster, and target exactly where to do something. Because let's face it, with climate change, one thing we know for sure is we're against the clock.
Yeah.
So if we can speed things up and make them more accurate, then yes, we're still going to do as much, but we can be more effective quicker.
Yeah, Alan, just asking you, what does 250,000 trees look like?
230,000 trees is, well, at first they look very small.
No. When they're fully grown.
When they grow into a full forest, well, yeah, I mean, it's a forest.
Yeah, and where's this going to go?
But that's the thing, it needs to go in lots of different places. It can't just be one great big forest stuck in one space. Yes, that will sequester carbon and will do a lot of good. But if we can use the trees in more than just sequestering carbon, if we can get them to soak up water, to break up barren soil, to act as a barrier to air pollution, there's so much more that plants can do for us.
Do they act as a barrier to coastal erosion, for example?
They can bind soil together, but coastal erosion is a whole different set of physics because they're getting undercut.
The layman, like I would say, we need to plant more trees. Yeah. We need to plant more trees because trees are good for the earth, and we learn this in school, and we all know that it's good, to have trees around. But you can't just go sticking trees around wherever you fancy sticking trees because there's a knock-on effect, isn't there? So this does actually come back to a technology and a science and being able to predict, plot, plan, monitor all of these things. And we're going to need to do more of that because we're going to need to plant more as the earth evolves, if you like. I guess what I'm appealing to is the people that are worried about technology and they hear things like blockchain and things like that, and they just go, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to me as a human on Earth? I just don't care. It's just more people spending money on stuff that doesn't matter. That's generally some of the stuff that you get when you hear about anything to do with space or whatever. Everything sounds like a vanity project. What's nice here is you're saying, look, these things really do matter to you because it will affect you and your children and the people that are around you. as you continue to live.
Yeah. So as a STEM ambassador, I'm teaching children about how to use low Earth orbit observation from satellites to understand climate change,
Yeah.
because that is the best tool for the job. Last year, November, it was Walrus Day, World Wildlife Fund, counting walruses using satellites from the
Already
European
sounds like
Space
fun.
Agency. It was the only way you could count the population of walruses. We had heat spots in the North Sea last year which were record-breaking, off-the-chart and scary. We only knew because of the satellites. There is creatures that live on the surface of the ocean that we can only see by satellite. So Earth observation is so important. But yes, it has a footprint to get the things up there. But they are giving us a value back as well.
Yeah.
And we need to balance that. And we really can't manage without them to tackle a project, to tackle a challenge which is global and really be able to monitor it and see how to be effective as possible, as quickly as possible, in the right places where it's needed the most, with the limited resources that we've got.
Yeah.
So it has to be included. We have to include technology in the solution.
Yeah, I suppose the argument is that, as you said earlier on, it's a finite planet. Therefore, you have to look beyond that. As humans, we've been able to develop the capability to look beyond, the rock that we're on, if you like, to go out there and find new things to the benefit of humanity. And that's ultimately what your goal is about, it sounds like to me.
Well, it's about using what's available to do the best that we can for Earth as it is, whether that be for biodiversity or for nature, for climate change, for mitigating flooding, for getting rid of plastics in the oceans. There's so many things that need to be tackled.
Yeah.
And also, I think it does help on a political level as well to look at the way that we do things in space.
Yeah.
The ISS is a space station filled with multiple nationalities working together in harmony.
Yeah.
Unlike on the ground here. So, there's a lot to be learned from working together in that way as well. So,
Yeah.
But also, you look at SpaceX, you mentioned Elon Musk earlier, his justification for what he's doing is that it is a finite planet and we maybe need to become a multiplanetary species just to avoid the big rock that's coming. That's his justification for doing what he's doing, and he's got a point.
Yeah.
Personally, it's all about the Earth observation satellites, and it's about doing things more sustainably.
Yeah.
Without giving too much away about the way that our solution works for blockchain, I'll put it this way: if all of the data centers that are currently causing a big footprint were running on renewable energy, that would be a big step.
Yeah.
In space, it's 24-hour renewable energy.
Yeah.
If we didn't have to cool these computers down all the time, that would be a lot of energy saved.
Yeah.
It's pretty cold in space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're getting the idea of how,
Sure.
different thermodynamics
Yeah.
and different energy source.
Because we kind of assume that everything we do in our phone is zero footprint, but every time you Google or put a Facebook post, that's on the server in Arizona or something, and it's horrendously costly, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're generating so much data that's useless.
Well, I agree. I think it's an education thing, and you've really helped a lot today, Alan, because you've kind of tried to break down some of these misconceptions about, or understand at least, of what technology, the role technology already plays in, and what it's going to play. But I think you're right, because when you're on your phone or social media, I mean, everyone hears like terms like the cloud and things like that, and it's like, well, it's not some mystical thing. That's all driving through a data center somewhere, buried in a desert somewhere. That requires endless amounts of energy and water and cooling and everything you can imagine. It's not in the ether. These things are infrastructure, and that's what enables us to live our lives the way that we live them currently. And unfortunately, we can't just keep building these massive infrastructures because, as you say, we're on a finite piece of rock essentially, and eventually the resources aren't just not going to enable us to do that.
As we say in ASP, there's always another way.
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to find.
To close in, what do you think the future of space looks like?
Well, I think
So to take a step back, just going on to the headlines and stuff like that, there's a lot of discussion around, flying to the moon, exploring Mars, all of that kind of stuff.
Mining.
Mining. Where do you see it going?
I think that it's a big space, and there's a lot of different people who are sending things up for a lot of different reasons. I think that we will be on the moon this year. There will be colonies developed on there, I'm sure, and they will become a staging post for Mars. There will be exploration of Venus, I'm sure, as well, because there's probes that are ready to go. And some people will be looking for resources like water, which would be useful. More water's a good thing. And some will be looking for other things like elements, lithium, platinum.
Yeah.
I would suggest that it would be better to mine them off a uninhabited moon with no life as we know it on it than to mine any more off this planet if we still need it.
Yeah.
It's the life as we know it bit that I'm not so sure about.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, as a permaculturist, you know, I run the permaculture garden. That's what I do. I appreciate the edge of things. If you imagine you've got a forest and you've got a field, there's things that live in the forest, there's things that live in the field, and then there's other species who live on the edge because they've adapted to live in forest and field, and they're a completely different thing.
Yeah.
We need to look at space in a very similar way. There's us and there's there, and at some point soon we may be crossing from one environment to the other.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be looking at things like, what is childbirth like on Mars? What does that future look like for us? Is that a new species? Yeah. Will there be adaptation and evolution in that?
Yeah.
You know, it's a fascinating move we're making.
You wouldn't be an Earthling.
No, it's a fascinating thing we're looking at. It could be a new evolution. I don't know, and is that a good thing for us or not? Yeah. But I would like to see more exploration of what's possible and more learning about what we don't know. Yeah. And maybe if we learn a little bit more about the rest of the universe, it might help us understand a little bit more about the planet that we're on.
Yeah, yeah. And I think education, I mean, some of the stuff you've touched upon today, it shows, and even in myself, a real lack of education about some of the stuff that's going on out there and that's possible. News reports that I hear around, say, for example, space tourism, which we hear all the time, and typically people say, well, it's a vanity project, and if you've got loads of money, you can fly to the atmosphere and stuff like that. But actually, if that became more and more accessible as the technology allowed, and more people could actually experience what it was like to be on the edge of the atmosphere and kind of see what's going on, maybe there's a huge education role in people developing their knowledge about the way that we live now.
Absolutely. People are generally profoundly affected by seeing Earth from a different perspective and seeing it from space and realising everything they have ever loved or cared about is on that small planet.
Yeah.
Maybe more people should experience that. But yeah, so there is a certain vanity project element to that, and there is the footprint that comes from that. But I think we just need to keep innovating so that we can mitigate that footprint in some way, not offset it, but change the way we do it.
Yeah.
Pangalactic's focus is not that. We're not looking at space exploration, really. We're looking at space utilisation and space liberation for the good of people who are here and the people at home.
Yeah. Do you fancy a trip out to space, Rob?
Yeah, I would like to go to California first, maybe space later, yeah.
All right, okay. So you just want to keep flatly on the land before,
I think so,
before jetting off. Yeah.
I
think I'd like to try it. I don't know about a
not
flight.
so sure about strapping myself to a rocket personally, but hey.
Yeah.
Still remember Columbus. Was it Columbus? Space shuttle.
Yeah, but there was an interview recently with Tim Peake, the astronaut, and he was sort of saying, touching upon your point there, Alan, that when you're out there and you're looking at the planet from the other perspective, all sense of kind of politics or conflict or anything like that is just gone, because you're just seeing this small, really, in the scheme of things, vulnerable tiny little thing that is just everything that your whole existence, everything you possibly know is there, kind of thing. And I suppose you have a whole different perspective in terms of you can get lost by not seeing it.
And you don't necessarily have to go to space to get it.
No.
You could just look at all of the Earth observation satellite footage and see it from there as well. And using that, you could make a difference right where you are right now.
Yeah, or you could just get out into nature a bit more as well. This is another thing, and just look at some of the stuff that's actually physically around you.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-blowing, actually, if you look at it.
Yeah, as above, so below. There's microcosm in a leaf. You just got to look at the drop of water.
Yeah.
Prince William had a go at them, didn't he? A couple of years ago in The Independent, wrote an article saying, let's fix this planet before we start spending all that money going somewhere else, which I have a lot of sympathy for that personally. But I think what you're doing, utilising the resources and using it in a smart way, is the right thing to be doing, absolutely. And there's loads of people scrapping over the moon, isn't there? Who's got the rights to mine the moon? And it just feels like, for God's sake, guys, haven't we done enough damage with that?
Well, maybe if they're going to do it anyway, maybe we can save them arguing over what was found there, because it'll all be saved on a post-quantum secure blockchain that doesn't have a footprint.
Perfect.
Perfect ending.
Job done.
Alan, this has been really interesting. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
The best of luck with Pan Galatic and the projects you're doing. I'm looking forward to hearing about the project that is pending.
Yes.
And maybe you can come back and talk to us about that when there's more going on.
There'll be announcements very soon.
Cool. Thanks very much. Thanks, Rob.
Pleasure.
See you next time.
Cheers.